Hello everybody, Paul and Matt are back for Break of Throw, and we are going to be looking at one of the most famous throws ever in the world of darts. We are going to be looking at Adrian Lewis today. Now, you might think that you know everything about Adrian Lewis's throw from around 2005 to the current day. Me and Matt have been watching him for about 20 years or more, but we're going to have a very close look, aren't we, Matt?
Certainly are. Two-time world champion. You'd think he's got it all, and we're going to hear and break it down a little bit.
Yep. Let's have a look.
Hello, I'm Adrian Lewis, and this is my throw breakdown. I try to get myself in a straight line. I approach the hockey like so. I aren't an MVG kind of, that kind of style. I'm more like that angle really, anyway. And then obviously try to keep everything straight then.
First thing to really pick up on here is he's talking about keeping his action straight, keeping it through, and he's focusing on the front foot. Now, it's interesting that he's talking about the angle changing, but when we're talking about it being straight in the direction, it's what happened with the back foot that interested me the most. So when he talked about it being straight, you notice how the back foot moved to the left-hand side, just to square off the hips. That's what's going to allow him to throw straight. And a lot of people get this wrong. A lot of people focus on the front foot when they're doing this, but it's the back foot that's going to be directional.
Yeah, when you look at both hips, you have to see where both hips are pointing. It's a bit like when you're standing up straight. You don't stand up straight with your left hip back and your right hip forward. It's about having both hips pointing in the right direction. Now, for Adrian, for comfort, obviously what he's trying to do here is to point his body in a 45-degree angle away from the board. If you're looking at the left-hand side, that's 90 degrees. If you're looking directly at the board, that's 0. He's about 45 degrees, isn't he? And that foot placement that we can see right here, that is actually him in a 45-degree stance, and that's what he's trying to do. With his back foot, he's trying to stabilise in what you've just said there.
I hold the dart literally, my thumb, that's my thruster there, so my thumb sits on there, and I'm literally like that really just makes sure I've got the right balance of the dart, and then it's back, roll and release really, and that's basically what it's about.
Now, I think with that one, Matt, what we can already tell that Adrian's biggest strength is feel. It's not necessarily technical, it's about what he feels.
I think there's two things that really work for me in this one. The first one is the talking about the throw and the grip. Most of the time it is the finger and the thumb that propel the dart, the engine that goes. So he described it as a thruster. The other three tend to be just for balance. Yeah. And just to make sure the dart feels happy and comfortable within the hand. The other thing that I can tell from this is when he's trying to explain his throw and he goes, well, that's just about it really. How much do players even understand the mechanics of their own throws? How much do people, darts isn't traditionally from a very heavily coached background. How much of it is just people picked up a dart, threw it a certain way, and it just worked for them? And, when you talk about Adrian Lewis being on field, we talk about him being a very natural player. It looks to me like he's really struggling to understand the mechanics of what makes him so good.
Yeah, and I didn't realise that Adrian Lewis threw the dart from the back of the barrel pretty much on the stem, so close to the flight. Now, he's using a moulded flight in this footage here, but I saw his thumb and forefinger very close to that flight there.
I mean, everybody says, about different grips and so on. Personally, to me, it's just how I've always held it, so it's how, what feels comfortable, I think. I think that's the most important part.
What about the darts themselves? Are they new or?
These are, I think I've had these off target now a week, so these are my newbies, 21 gram. I wouldn't say this part here is really grippy, but that doesn't really make much difference to myself because obviously I hold it more further to the back.
What I can tell from this, Matt, is that he's got grip on the darts, but he doesn't necessarily need it. Now, I've always been of a certain mind that if you have grip on your dart, it's because you need it for certain finger placement. If he doesn't need that grip, why is it there?
We've also got to remember as well, although it's traditionally for him, there's also marketability that needs to come into things as well. I can talk about from my own darts when I had those first designed. There's bits where I'm like, I don't even touch that bit. And they're like, oh, right, well, we can do something marketable there. We can jazz them up a bit. We can make it look nice. So we've also got to remember that sometimes it's not just about what works for the player. It's also what works for sort of marketability.
Is it about weight dispersion as well? Because sometimes if you put a solid barrel together with very little grip on it, it might have a bit too much weight. It's not necessarily just about grip. It's about making sure that the balance of the dart is right and making sure that that is constant from top to bottom.
Yeah, you put grip into something, you're cutting away material, which is going to change the balance point of the dart. Then you've got to do the other things, like you might have to drill a little bit, like the drill depth in regards to the back of the dart where the stem goes in. You might have to make that shallower, you might have to make it deeper, which is then going to change the integrity of the dart. So there is a lot that goes into the actual planning and the designing of a dart rather than just, does it look pretty?
And he's using that word natural again, isn't he? When he's been with certain people in his career, he has been told to slow down, or he's been advised to slow down. But this word natural, it keeps coming up with Adrian. He's got to do what's natural for him to proceed with whatever career he wants moving forward.
He used the word comfort as well, which is a big thing in the fact that we need to make sure that anything that happens with Adrian is comfortable and is natural. And when we look at it, there's a lot of people that just advocate for that. Do what feels right, do what feels natural, do what feels comfortable. I advocate that to a degree, but there's also an advert where you've got to make sure you're doing the right things as well. And we talk about throws looking so differently. You know, you compare Adrian Lewis to a John Henderson, you know, they don't look anything like. However, that's only if you're looking in places where you go, that's different, that's different. But actually, each of these throws will all have a lot of fundamental things the same. And it's about focusing to make sure they're in, and then the rest of it is comfort.
I think your darts, if you use a point like a 50mm point, I think your dart's got to sit at a certain angle. If they sit up a little bit like myself, like that kind of thing, you don't really want that. You've got nothing for obviously throw against, because literally you've just got the point to aim at, and that's it. Well, it probably suits a player where, you know, if your dart's sitting a bit more on a slant or a straighter dart, probably that'll obviously slow the dart down in the end and catch. That's my opinion on it.
I like that word catch, because this is something that the flights are able to do. They can catch a dart. It's not necessarily the barrel that does that. A lot of focus is on the barrel that people throw, but it's the flights that catch the barrels in midair, and that is something he does very well. And a word he used there was throwing against something. Now, that's not necessarily plausible for someone who lands a dart like Phil Taylor, or someone who stacks the dart on top. He's getting them to throw against because he wants them upright.
Which is probably why he's now using the MODUS system, because it gives him that backboard. The best analogy I can give for this sort of scenario is netball versus basketball.
Yeah.
You shoot into a netball hoop, it's much harder than the basketball because of the backboard. Adrian Lewis is essentially trying to build that backboard, which is why he's so good at following dart one.
All right. Anything else to say, Adrian?
Oh, no, I don't know. And I'm trying the new K-Flex. Since I've been throwing these, yeah, they've been going quite well.
What was your favourite iteration of your darts?
My favourite what, sorry? I've never heard that word in my life. What's that about?
Like, what was your favourite version of your darts?
It's tough really, because I've thrown pretty well with most darts. I think it's about consistency, and I don't think that's to do with my darts as such. I think it's more, yay, 180 there you go. I think it's more to do with my mindset, I think. I can't really say, oh, well, this dart was better than that dart, because it's all on myself.
Well, sometimes it's not just about the dart, it's about the mindset. We've heard buzzwords like natural and things like that. I think if Adrian's going to succeed in whatever he does with darts moving forward, he's got to be comfortable, he's got to be natural, and he just needs a vessel to play. Isn't that right?
And with that, if you're going to be comfortable, if you're going to be natural, you have to be happy. You have to enjoy what you're doing. And if you're not enjoying it, you can't be those things. So for Adrian Lewis, he needs to make sure that when he is playing, he's doing what he loves to do, playing with a smile on his face, and that he's not overdoing it. I think he's one of those people, don't suit a heavy schedule. He wants to enjoy his darts, and that's when you're going to get the best.
Natural, comfortable, happy, and that's just me and Matt.